Hello, and welcome to another World of UX podcast. This is your host, Darren Hood. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. And as always, a special welcome for those of you joining us for the first time. We're going to play the conclusion of my Talkin shop session with UX veteran Susi. A lot of people are finding this a treat. We hope and expect that you will enjoy the conclusion of this discussion. Let's go ahead and dive right in, shall we?
I don't mind that. I actually like, because I do think that there are people who, by using your hands, sometimes it opens up different synapses in the brain. I believe there's something to that. But I also believe it gives design a bad brand, because when you do have like these playthings on the table, it means that we're the fun group. You know, we do the fun stuff. And I want to do the fun stuff too. You know, so people want to be in UX from other teams, but they're not signing up on an official contract like we are. Like, that's my job. That's my career, my profession. Right. And you can't just play designer in a company. You know, if you want to move in this direction, please talk to your manager, but please do your work too. You know, and let's talk about how it's going to work. But so this scenario, though, back at the company, everyone was sketching something, and we all put our sketches up on the window, because that's what you're supposed to do, right? And there were no stickies yet, but those were coming. And the drawings, it's funny because all the engineers drew wireframes, right? And my manager came up to me and said, "I was really surprised that you didn't draw anything." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "We use mostly words," and they were like lines connecting things. I said, "I drew a workflow. Like I wanted to say, look at all the drawings of the wireframes in here, and they're all the same wireframe. You want to know why? Because a product, that's pretty much what's on every product page, is either a graph, a table. You know, like there were only 3 or 4 design patterns really, you know, that you could come up with there." And I said, I, as a designer, am more concerned about how a person moves through things and what things they bump across that are stopping them, what friction comes up, and or where they need to go next. So they understand it. And so that's why I drew what I drew. Why should I, in a design workshop, have to explain that to my manager? Like, it doesn't make sense. Now, I think he's a great guy, you know, but when you're a development manager, that's not the right person for a designer to report to, unless they really are getting training on how to be a design manager, you know, or be a UX manager, really. I mean, there's differences even there, depending on what the nature of the organization is, right?
Yes.
If it's an agency, a design manager would be something different than a design manager within UX. So yeah. Anyhow, so I didn't draw a wireframe. I'm surprised. But yeah, what's funny though is, and this isn't a dig against my father-in-law. He actually would say, knowing that I went to art school, he would say, "Oh, just give him some crayons. That'll keep him busy over there," right? You know, joking. And you know, I would get a little flustered by that, but I was never angry. I know he was just jesting. But in a weird way, though, that's, I think, the way business sometimes sees UX is, you know, they're the sticky notes people. Oh, let's just get some sticky notes and pretend like we're doing the right, you know, analysis, but they'll never use the word analysis with the synthesis. You know? Right.
We are all over the place, but that is
okay. Sorry about that.
But that's okay. No apologies. That's okay. I know I'll hear from somebody and they will love this. But next topic.
Yes.
Talk about fun. Let's get into some fun stuff. This one's going to be fun. We identified these topics before we started recording. And so the next topic is stupid interview stories.
Oh boy, I have a lot of those.
What comes to mind? Let's limit it to 3. Minimum of 1 or 2, but limit it to 3.
Yeah. Thanks for setting up that limitation, because that's going to be helpful.
And I'm going to kick us off with one in particular. I'm going to make sure we include this with the 3. That we were talking, and you mentioned a situation where you came into an interview, they loved you, they loved what you brought to the table. I've experienced the same thing before too. We're so happy to be able to, I was so glad I was able to talk to you. Man, I was so excited. Man, love everything you bring to the table. But you know what? You're overqualified.
Yeah.
Man, the kiss of death.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's weird that it comes up sort of towards the end of the interview, right?
Yeah.
You know, like what you wonder, well, why did you bring me in then? If you knew you weren't going to hire me, that it wasn't going to go to a next round. For me, as soon as I say overqualified, I think that's a code word for old, or that's a code word for going to be a problem. You're not fresh out of a boot camp or fresh out of college, and won't, if you're quote unquote overqualified, you might be of the caliber of designer who would push back on something, or who might want research to be part of it. So you're not the fresh young gun coming out there and wanting to do all this very fast production work, and get it done in Figma, which I think is what a lot of companies are probably looking for, is more of that crayon person, right? Or and I think what was it for you with overqualified that was the fun thing that they were actually looking for potentially?
The thing with me, and I'm of the same belief that overqualified is a code word. And the last time I heard it, because I've heard it before, but the last time I heard it, it was, we don't want to pay you.
Oh, they were worried about would be really high up in the,
Yeah, which is crazy. I mean, you know who really I find gets the highest salaries in UX based on some of the research I've done? It's entry-level people that land at startups or something like that, who they've heard that you can get these high six-figure salaries, and they go in and they ask for it and they get it.
Yeah.
The assumption, and which is insane, because there is no, that's not sustainable. That crazy high salary is not sustainable. And eventually they're going to get rid of that individual, especially when they find out that person is not bringing value, because they just demanded a high salary because they heard that it's available, and they got it from you because they demanded it, and you didn't know any better, you being the hiring company. Here's the one funny thing about that whole overqualified bit when it comes to what I experienced, that, we're not going to hire you because we can't afford you. They assume that you want some high, crazy salary.
Right.
I do not. And I know a lot of other people that's not, we don't want $180,000 a year for a position that's clocked at 120.
Right.
If we have any experience at all, we know what the going salary is going to be for a particular position, and would not have applied for your role if we were not going to be okay with that salary. And the one thing that I said with a group of people I talked about with recently was that people assume that we want X, the salary of X. I don't want a salary of X. I want to be able to take care of my household. I want to be able to have a livelihood. I want to be able to pay my car note. I want to be able to pay my mortgage. I don't have to have some goo-gob salary, this astronomical salary from another galaxy, because I know also that that's not sustainable, and I'm not stupid enough to ask that of you.
Right.
So when they make these, I mean, I had somebody once, I don't think this person said overqualified, big insurance company that I interviewed for a UX manager role for. He didn't say that I was overqualified. He said, you're going to be bored. I think I mentioned this in a recent episode.
Yes,
you're going to be bored. Who are you? Same thing I said in that other episode. Who are you to tell me what I'm bored by? Matter of fact, the concept of boredom is not part of my makeup.
Right.
So technically, I'm not bored about anything. So why would you, to me, and I'd say this, I speak even in UX spaces, I speak in outside of UX spaces, and I always say this because I think it's true across each one of these types of platforms where I'm speaking, each one of these topic areas that I'm speaking in, is that to be bored is a mark of immaturity.
Yeah.
Because if you are a seasoned individual, it is what it is. I need to do X. This is my responsibility. And boredom is not something that crosses my mind. I'm not looking to my job to be excited.
Right.
It's called work for a reason. That's something else I constantly tell people. It's called work for a reason. And I'm opting in. When I accepted the role, then I'm going to do all the work that's associated with my responsibilities.
Right.
It's not about being bored. I'm not going to leave. I never left a job because it was boring.
Right.
Because boring is not a part of it. I have duties.
Right.
So when a person accused me of, and he told me, we were actually conversing. He said this to me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're going to be bored. I said, why would I be? Why would I be bored? But he eventually did not allow me to move on to the final round, because he was like, this close to being ready to make an offer, which he ended up making an offer to somebody else. I actually knew the person that got the job, and they're still in that job, to my knowledge, to this day.
Are they bored?
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah, I think that says a lot about the person interviewing you, though.
Yes, it
That
does.
they must consider their job very boring, and they don't know how to be excited about who they are, what they do, which is really weird.
Yes.
Like, you're the wrong person to interview me, let me tell you.
And you know what else? You just made me think about something else. I almost forgot about this. Another code, another thing that it means when somebody says you're overqualified or you're going to be bored or anything of that ilk.
Yeah.
It's just the person trying to find some reason in their heart to justify them disqualifying you from further consideration. So they just say you're overqualified because they can't think of anything else.
Yeah.
So they just say it. And they're not trying to be ethical. They're just trying to self-justify.
They're trying to make themselves feel better, you mean?
Yes.
Or something like that? Yeah,
yes.
yeah. That
so
makes
they
sense.
just say, oh, you're going to be bored. Oh, you're overqualified. You bring too much to the table. And the funny thing also about that is you'll say I'm overqualified, but you won't interview me when you have the position that you think I'm most qualified for. You won't consider me for that either. So they put you in this weird employment trick bag.
Yeah.
That you don't fit anywhere, which is basically what they're saying collectively, which makes no sense. And then the same people hire somebody who's underqualified.
Underqualified, right. See, this is the weird part. I'm in this group called, it's JSC. It stands for Job Search Council.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on this book, Never Search Alone.
Yes,
So right?
Yeah, I know about that.
So a woman encountered the same thing. A person in my group encountered the same thing. Someone told her that not that she would be bored, but that she's overqualified before the end of the interview. And I said to her, did you ask, oh, do you mean that means I'm too old? So I think that's what I would ask is, what do you mean I'm too old or I'm going to ask for too much? But what I said is maybe what was happening there is that person, they wanted to hire someone underqualified, that they knew that they saw you as overqualified because they're not qualified for what they do.
Yep.
So someone who's very overqualified, doesn't seem qualified. They just seem like, I'm not worthy. but in a bad way, like in an actual, like they're not worthy of this person.
Yeah.
When in fact this person would probably take the role. I told her, well, why don't you go back to them and say that you'd like to do this as an independent consulting gig, like only work 20 hours for them, charge them 5 times as much, and like just show them like what they need, show them that they needed to hire you full time and that they just didn't know it yet. Because I think just because she knows what she's doing. Sometimes people are scared by people who know what they're doing. They love it sometimes during an interview when they'll hire you, but then when you're inside the company, certain people don't want to look bad by comparison, and it causes a problem. Right?
Yeah. You just brought something else back to mind too. I actually had the privilege of being told that I was overqualified and then meeting the person who eventually got the job. And that person said they're a UX team of one.
Yeah.
And they talked about the frustration of not having another UX person to interact with. Now, this person was hired into quote unquote a senior UX role.
Yeah.
The person I had literally 10 times more experience than that individual. They said, literally, no exaggeration at all, literally 10 times more. So you brought that person in. You thought that person is the better hire. So you brought them in, but now that person really does not have the chops to operate as a UX team of one. So here they are in need of somebody more senior, holding a senior role, not really being qualified because they need another 5-6 years of experience to actually qualify for a senior role, because a true senior can operate as a team of one. And as that person was telling me, you don't need to have somebody to bounce something off of.
Right.
You don't need a shoulder to lean on. You don't need anybody to hold you by the hand and help you navigate around certain business challenges that come up as a UX team member of one. So they've hired somebody for different reasons. I don't know if they assumed that I wanted more money. They already told me what the salary was, and I said, that's fine by me. And it's not like, no, I don't want to come in there and then I'm just going to leave in 2 months because somebody's going to give me the money I want.
Yeah.
That never happens.
Right.
Not in a real world. I mean, and when I say the real world, it's not sustainable, is what I mean. If somebody does it, you're not going to be there long either because they're going to find out that they made a bad move in giving you that kind of money. So, but it's just amazing to over and over and over again, or what I talked about in one of my more recent episodes, I see these situations where people hire or they will not hire truly seasoned people who are actual reflections of a job description. And then you're starting to see more and more experiences like going into the tank. You know, the Home Depot, somebody had the grand idea to remove the global nav. Who in the world thought that was a great idea? You see, even at Amazon, you see, you try to reach out to contact somebody and all it does is take you in a loop. CVS, big pharmacy company, that you go to check on your prescription medications and nothing is listed. So you can't request a refill. So I try to call the pharmacy to talk to somebody to get more information. And then all it does is send you into a loop that drops you into a voicemail and then doesn't allow you to leave a voicemail. And then you go into the store to find out, oh, we just rolled out a new system and they're not communicating properly. And this is not happening. That's not happening. And they have my wife call because we're both asthmatics and we're trying to get the same thing. And they tell her one thing, but they tell me another. And all of this ties into the CX and the UX. But they won't hire anybody that actually has a viable amount of experience. I keep seeing this more and more and more. Dark patterns. This came up in our pre-recording conversation. Dark patterns are popping up more and more and more and more. And ironically, at companies, they keep telling people that they're overqualified. Keep telling people, qualified people, that they're going to be bored, and then hiring people with a smidgen of the experience of the people that they dusted off and sent on our way. You know, Bed Bath & Beyond. I mean, they're dead now, I think. I interviewed for a UX manager role there and was told, well, you don't have any e-commerce experience, when I actually have a ton of e-commerce experience. But you know what I did have that they didn't like? More experience than the person that was currently in charge of the UX department. So they tell you that you're overqualified because, you know what, you have more experience than me, and you probably want my job. They assume they're paranoid. You can't keep putting these paranoid people in these positions to run the UX teams because they're eventually going to do something that's going to really severely detrimentally impact the team's operation, as well as the internal brand of the UX team, as well as potentially as going to happen, the profit margins of the organization, because you got the wrong people running the UX teams.
Right. You need someone who's going to be able to say, like, maybe for a second they get a little paranoid and nervous about it, but then they say, yeah, but we need that talent. You know, and I don't care if they have this many more years of experience because we're all going to learn from each other something, right? You know, we all get something from this experience together. And just realize, like, you got to take the risk. If you really think they're out for your job, I'm sorry, for the benefit of just CVS, man. You touch CVS, and that's one of my personal favorites to pick on. But you know, not here, not now. You know, I don't want to. I might want to work for them someday.
Yeah, I know. I've already applied multiple times. I never get anywhere. So
just not in the pharmacy. I don't want to work in the pharmacy because that would be a nightmare. Those poor people are so understaffed.
Yeah, they really work them hard, and then they make it worse by having them work with systems that don't work. That have poor UX support. They either have and nothing against somebody who, if you work for Amazon, and I think Amazon does do a lot of things right, but we all know how this works. If you work for Amazon, you work for Home Depot, you work for CVS, you're going, Darren, that's not fair. No, you got to understand. I know how you feel. Sometimes you have great UX people and they don't listen to us. So I know that doesn't mean that everything there is bad, but if they're not listening to you, that means there's a UX maturity problem. So it still boils down to the UX team, either way it goes. So no, we're not disparaging you. If you know you did something good and they're not listening, I've been in your shoes. I know the feeling. They don't listen, and that happens. We don't get listened to on a good day. We don't get listened to more than 60% of the time. So
right, it
happens.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, that happens a lot.
But give me one more
One more interview
one more
Oh
interview
boy.
story. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you one that let me see. Oh boy, which one? Oh, I wish I had a database right here. The one my wife likes the most is really, it shows what a clown I can be sometimes. So
Mm.
I'm driving into Kendall Square, and I forget what decade this was, but and Kendall Square, Cambridge is really hard to park in. It's MIT area, the brain trust of, biomed and all this stuff. And I must have had 2 or 3 interviews in the same couple of days. And I remember on the drive in, I spilled coffee all over my shirt. And so I parked and I had to go find a place to buy a shirt. And I bought a shirt, thought I was looking pretty sharp. I went in the interview, and for some reason, people keep saying, hold on, I'm going to get so-and-so to come in, and they're going to, so they keep bringing more people in, not so that there's a crowd, but it's one at a time. And they keep sending another person in. And I came out of the interview thinking like, wow, they must have been really impressed. They're really getting into me. They love how I was talking about UX and all this. I get home, and my wife looks at the new shirt that I'm wearing, and it says XL, XL, XL. So they must have been saying, go in there and look at this clown. Nobody told me, though. No one did the human-centered thing and said, you might want to, for at least the next person we send in here to show what an unbelievable schmuck you are. Take that thing off.
Did you get that job?
Oh, I wish, for future comedy storytelling, I'll say that I got the job. But no, I don't think I got that job. Yeah. But I've had other ones that I think what you wanted to know from. So it's on both sides, right, Darren? It's not just the companies that pull weird stuff, but it's also sometimes the UXer's fault for when a job doesn't get landed.
Yeah, it
right?
is.
Yeah.
And
the clothing store, it would have been nice if the person in the clothing store said, you might want to take that off where you go to your interview.
Yes.
They didn't know where I was going. They thought I was just wearing it out. Anyhow.
I'll piggyback until a brief story of something that happened with me. I interviewed with a Fortune 50 company. I was ecstatic about being able to interview with this company. This is when I used to get a lot of interviews. But it was also it was at the tail end of the time when you would actually, getting an interview was actually a meritorious achievement where you did something and you got an interview because you actually brought something to the table. Now, for a lot of us, we bring something to the table. You are actually less likely to get an interview when you bring something to the table. Quite frankly. So just to tell people. Okay. So that's what I have learned. But I go into this interview at this huge company. If I remember correctly, I got interviewed by 11 people.
Oh.
11 people. And I think I'd already had my screening. It was 11 people. I didn't even know what the process was going to be after this. One of the people, I mentioned this before, one of the people looked like a Klansman. And he sat there on the edge of his seat with this look on his face, leaning forward. Like when this interview, it was like he was saying everything but, or he was looking at me, his face said, when this interview is over, I'm going to follow you to the parking lot and I'm going to kill you. That was the look on this guy's face.
Yeah.
The entire time. I don't even think he ever said anything. He just sat there the whole interview and made faces at me the entire time. And another person fell asleep.
Oh, wow.
During the interview. Huh. And I was really insulted by that, especially because this interview was at 9:00 in the morning. So, so that was something. And they had me do a design exercise. It was my first job where I ever had to do a design exercise for an interview. So
on the day, like in the office?
I actually did it the night before. They sent it to me and I did it and brought it in and did a presentation.
Okay.
Based on what they asked me to do. And then someone asked me a question during this interview and I was so incensed. Talk about something being your fault.
Yeah.
I was so incensed by the question that I just, and I'm very from the hip. I don't put on airs. And this was one of those days where I was so the Klansman, the person falling asleep, and now this. To me, it was strike 3.
Yeah.
These are 3 things you don't do to a candidate in an interview. And when this person asked me what I thought about patterns, when they were asking me about patterns, they weren't talking about pattern libraries. They were talking about background patterns.
Really?
Background patterns.
Background patterns.
And they asked, why are you asking me about background patterns? And I thought this was the most ridiculous question. And you could tell that the person was asking a question because someone pressured him to ask me a question. So he asked me a ridiculous question. So I answered, because at the time, background patterns, so to tell you how long ago this was, this person's asked me about background patterns. And I'm like, this is a silly question.
Yeah.
To ask somebody, everybody knows what a background pattern is. Why would you ask me about a background pattern?
Yeah.
And I got so incensed by that. I slouched in my seat. I sat in my seat. I completely slouched. I was sliding all the way down in the seat. And I was sitting there, stretched my legs out. It reminds me of that sketch on Saturday Night Live where the three people that are taken by the aliens and they come in, the government wants to.
Oh, yeah.
And like there was the one lady who's acting all crazy on the end. I was looking like her when I was sitting there stretched out. And I'm like, I said, you know what? Forget about burning bridge. I was so upset with this company. I said, I'm not even I don't believe in burning bridges. I believe in blowing them up.
Yeah.
Because the company was so respected. They were so highly respected by me, but they treated me so badly. I don't ever want to come back here and interview again. And so that's my horror story. That I blew that interview up and regret it later doing that.
Oh, really?
Because when they were trying to put together what they called a super UX team, and my name came up later, and they reached out to me, and I never heard back from them after we had our initial conversation. I think that they put something in my file after that.
Oh boy, yeah.
After that interview, but I just couldn't trust if this company called me, I'm going to want to work with them. But I found that so many companies, to me, they allow people to come to interviews. They're not prepared. They don't know how to interview. They're operating in the isms. There's just all these problems, and I just think it's bad it's already an extremely trying scenario. Being in the job market, it's so stressful. It's so painful. It's not what it used to be. I mean, it was always stressful. It was always painful, but not like it is today.
No,
because now merit doesn't mean anything. The currency of interviews in UX circles is completely dysfunctional and discombobulated. You're going to ask me for to view my portfolio as if the portfolio is a reflection of who I am. It is not a reflection of who I am solely. Right. It is a reflection of the types of projects I worked on. It's a reflection of the case studies that I've been subjected to. As a person who's always had a great deal of responsibility, going all the way back to when I started in 1995, I would have many a project. On top of the fact you don't want to see anything from 1995 in my portfolio, number one, which makes a portfolio a discriminatory vehicle.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff I've done that I can't show you because it's dated.
Yeah.
On top of that, everything in my portfolio is not just a reflection of me, it's a reflection of who I worked with and the constraints that we were all subjected to. So now you're not just judging me, you're judging who I was working with the person, 5, 10 other people, and who they were working with.
Right.
And that's not a fair proposition.
It's the same issue I have with performance reviews, annual performance reviews.
Yes.
I'm on a team. There's no I in the team, supposedly, right? Except for the negative space and the A. There's no I in team. So I think when you get judged by, your performance, supposedly in your context is key to whether or not you could be successful.
Yes.
And your ability to convince people to do what you think is the right thing based on the research you've done, of course, but if you're always battling an uphill climb with all of this, chances are you're not going to get the good performance review that you deserve, especially because you're probably working doubly hard to get something in that is going to be changing, like a good changer.
Yeah. When you say that, you remind me of a portfolio let me mark that and come back and change that. You remind me of a time that we had a company I work for, and I hate when companies do this. They have peer reviews.
Oh yeah.
For performance. In general, it's a good idea, but there are instances where it's not good. And they said, you pick somebody and I'll pick 2 people, but you get to pick somebody. I said, okay, fine. They ended up at this particular company, one of the people that they picked to do my performance review is a person that happened to be a person that had subjected me to a form of sexual abuse.
Oh,
A form of sexual abuse that I had not reported. So now here's this person who has been coming into work, and the sexual abuse, it wasn't just me who was subjected to this. The person
sure.
came in and they would talk about their sexual exploits
Oh, yeah, yeah.
for other people to hear.
Yeah.
And we're listening to this, and you could, unless you pick up your computer and go work somewhere else, you're going to hear it because we're all within sort of earshot of what this person is saying. And when this person did these things and I didn't want to be a part of it, so I walked away. So this person then had a vendetta against me.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about this stuff in interviews.
Right.
Like people, well, you sure did have a lot of short stints, Darren. Yeah, because I worked for a lot of crazy bosses and crazy bosses that are not being held accountable for having subjected me to a bunch of abuse and a bunch of other crazy things that had the company, had HR known, something would have happened, but I just left.
Yeah.
So I can't tell people that.
Right.
In an interview, all I can do is say, hey, and this is true. The shelf life of a UXer is actually short. And somebody actually once compared it to dog years. So when you stay at a company for 2-3 years, that's equivalent to, every year is equivalent to 5.
It's like 21 years or something. Oh, no, more.
Yeah.
More.
So if I stayed at a company for 1 year, well, that's like 5 years.
Yeah.
As a UX, if I stayed at a company for 2 years, and that's 10 years. And I stayed at a company for 5-6 months, then that's still equivalent to a lot longer than that because of the volatility and different things that are associated with working as a UX professional, it turned out. So
just the nature, I think, of design. What I don't think companies realize when you come in as a designer is part of your job is to be a troublemaker. Part of your job. No, it's why I like humor as a comparison.
Yeah.
A stand-up comedian has to go over the line, but then make you feel safe enough to laugh, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to, as a designer, work a lot on trust, work a lot on building relationships and trust, because otherwise, when you do step over the line and say, this is why we can't do that, people take it the wrong way. They think you're insulting the previous generation of people who created that design and they loved it and they loved that team. But you know what? This is now, though, and we have to be honest, and you have to be a little bit of a troublemaker. And so I think that maybe that's why 1 year equals 5, because you really have to put yourself out there. It's a vulnerable position to accept as a career, I think, by nature. Not only because people don't understand what we do sometimes, but this is one aspect of what we do that people do not understand.
Yeah.
No, that's part of might not have been a bullet point in our job description, but it really is between the lines there somewhere.
Yeah. And anybody who sees and knows that that's our job. I
hope so. Yeah.
I always heard us referred to as the voice of reason. And the voice of reason is not welcomed.
No.
A lot of times. We are what I coined this phrase recently, and I said it on a recent episode and say it again here. And I need to start. I haven't put it out there for people to read, so I need to do that. But we are hubris insurance.
I think I heard you say this the other day. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. There's so many scenarios, especially in startups, where I saw the whole company going down because of this one individual. And it was the person who every day at 11 o'clock in the engineering meeting would go, damn it, I'm the founder, I'm the CTO, I'm the biggest investor in the company, and we're going to do this. Now, meanwhile, all the engineer that said before him that triggered it was, but we weren't going to do that because yesterday you said we were going to do this. Like, they changed their mind so often.
Yeah.
Made very bad decisions, but you had to cave in because he wanted it that way. And lo and behold, within that year, that company was gone. It was really interesting to watch. And what's weird is by jumping around a lot, I don't know if you've had this where people go well, how come you haven't stayed somewhere for 3 years or more? And at the time I would say, well, because I wanted to get a job where I was, growing, and I just couldn't stay at so-and-so's company because of X, Y, and Z. I was just doing production work or, because what's wrong with jumping around? I mean, I look at my network, look at all the amazing people I've met, how many good projects I've done. Why did you stay here for 30 years? I don't get it. But anyhow, that's a whole other topic.
And people
Like,
never operate. They never look at the flip side of that.
right.
You jumped around a lot. Yeah, but you didn't.
Yeah.
Why is that? And I
Yeah.
found that a lot of people are not marketable,
Yep.
so they can't move around. I found a lot of people get comfortable with the
Yeah.
flow of things and
Yep.
don't want to rock their own boat. I
Yep.
tell the story sometimes of a person I knew that stayed at a company like 15, 20 years. And when I got there, the person had been there a long time. And I came in and then I found out exactly why the person had been there a long time and why they continued to stay and why the person, not only were they not marketable, the person only stayed at that company. And I know this doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen sometime. And this is a really extreme example I'm about to share. But this person stayed at that company for a long time because they had them wrapped around their finger. I don't know if they knew something, they had something on somebody. This person came to work. They did no real work. They brought their kids in to clean the refrigerator. It's a smaller business. They brought their kids in to clean the refrigerator. They got paid for that. The person was running a hair business in the ladies' bathroom during business hours and was probably doing HR's hair. That's how crazy this was.
Yeah.
This person was stealing. I was the webmaster for the internet site and the company's internet site and the intranet site. This person would steal my code and turn it in for a web certification they were getting from a local community college.
Wow.
That's why, and that became a caricaturized version of why people stay at companies for a long time, knowing that was an outlier. But a lot of people stay at companies for a long time because they can't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
She would not be able to go to another company and run a hair business. She would not be able to go to another company and let her kids come in and clean the refrigerators out.
Right.
There was a huge, for people who live in Metro Detroit, they'll know the time frame. They'll be able to know what company I'm talking about when I say this, because I worked for this company and there was this huge power outage. Something happened with the grid in Metro Detroit and power was out for like 5 days across all of Metro Detroit.
That's a long time. That's crazy.
And they tried to get us to come into the office because there were some things in the office that were on, some things that were on a generator, and some things that weren't.
Yeah.
And so they wanted us to come in to do certain things while everything was down. But if you didn't have any gas, this is how bad this was. If you didn't have any gas, you couldn't even come into the office.
Yeah. You couldn't get there.
And I didn't have, and the gas, there was the line at the gas station, the one gas station where we could get gas was a mile long.
Wow.
Literally a mile long. And you had to wait to get gas. And so I finally, one day, they tried to get me to come in and do some work. And I finally get in this line that was a mile long. And I had just enough gas to get up there, not without running out of gas, and get up there, get the gas. And by the time I got up to the front of gas, and cell phones weren't working either. And then I get a message, some kind of way. I get a message, hey, you don't have to come in. We got so-and-so to come in. That same person who happened to live like a stone's throw from the office.
Yep.
When the power came back on, and this is when I found out the corruption, and I left this company.
Because of that stuff.
She didn't because of what happened later. I leave the company because I come in and I find out when I came in, I got called straight into HR so they could chew me out for not coming in. I could not come in because I didn't have any gas.
Yeah.
So, and you can't stay in line long enough to get gas to come in. And when I did get gas, they told me not to come in because she had already come in.
Yeah.
She was the savior because she came in, but not being held accountable for having a hairdressing business in the ladies' bathroom, not being held accountable for not really doing any work during the day, and she was the big buddy with HR. So they knew that she was doing this and other underhanded things, but they, for some reason, were not holding her accountable. But I got chewed out. So here's a company that I eventually leave because of the corruption. And I've left other companies for the same reason.
Yeah, I've left other companies for that same reason.
And a lot of us have. But the people who do the dirt never get held accountable. Yeah. As I think people should stop giving folks a lot of flack.
Yeah.
For having short stints. Know that, trust us enough that there's a reason.
Yeah.
a reason that you're not supposed to be able to talk about in an interview. And respect
in a weird way, it's nobody's business, right? I mean, it's
it really
just,
isn't.
yeah.
Respect it.
Or why you had a certain amount of time where you didn't work or something. Like, look, this last stint, I left the company I was at.
Mhm.
It was a mutually agreed upon thing, but not something I wanted to originally, negotiate. But that's the way it had to go. And actually, it was a good decision. But I don't want to have to explain that to anyone. And I don't think I should have to explain that for about a year. I was feeling way out of it. I was just feeling like, wow, what just happened? It took me a while to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So to get my confidence back, to realize, no, I know what I'm doing. I don't know why I was made to feel differently. And it wasn't just me making myself feel differently. I was kind of told some things it was pretty weird. But and I know it's weird. Once again, you talk with people out in the industry, and the same thing is happening to so many people.
Yeah,
where they're like they just doubt their talent, and that these are talented people because you just know their work.
Yeah,
and you know their presence in the industry, their public speaking or whatever it is. And I don't know. So it's another strange industry thing happening now, which wasn't what we were.
Yeah. And it wasn't like this 10 years ago.
No.
And actually, I started noticing the volatility in 2011. It wasn't as volatile. The volatile was standard everyday volatility prior to 2011, where you would see anywhere, and I've been in corporate America for a bit. You see it, but not like what in UX in particular. That's when I started noticing. That's when I started formulating my concept of posers, retrofits, and upstarts, because that's when I started seeing them. And when I started seeing people who were not really UX folks, but were getting UX roles, and having a lack of confidence, and knowing that there are other people that are more qualified and actually know what we're doing, and instead of partnering with us and forging relationships that would help them to grow, mutually beneficial relationships that would help them to grow, you had people who would. I worked at one Fortune 25 company. Yeah, where when I came into the company, and there were no real UX practitioners on the team. Yeah, when I came into this big Fortune 25 company, and when I came in, my mindset was always, when you come in, learn the lay of the land. When you come in, learn what the rules of engagement are. Learn what the culture is like. Learn how to operate in this environment. That's anytime I go to a new company, you got to spend that initial time doing that. You can't just come in doing what you want.
Study the culture, right? Yes. Learn the culture. Yes. Yeah.
And I know that that's the way to operate. And I come into this company, and these people want me to start giving them design recommendations right away. I don't know who our users are yet. I don't know this product yet. I can't do that yet. So I said, not yet, not ready yet. And they were badgering me like 2-3 times a week. Come on, Darren, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And I don't know yet. I mean, I could speak heuristically, but that's not what you're asking me. Yeah. So after about a month, I said, you know what? These people keep badgering me and trying to get me to give input. I said, you want input from me? Yeah. So, okay, this is what I've observed so far. And I went, bam, 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 bam. And people are writing, and I'm going, what are they writing now? I'm not saying anything that's rocket science here. What's going on?
Sure, yeah.
I found out within a week, within a couple days, I started finding out there's 6, 7, 8 people in this meeting where I'm sharing my initial thoughts on our products. Yeah. And what's going on and where we need to go. These people took part of the reason apparently that they wanted me to share my thoughts, because none of them knew what they were doing. And they took everything that I said, basically stole it. Yeah. And they started taking my thoughts and ideas and running around the company and parading what I said as their ideas, followed by trying to do things to set me up, to get me in trouble and to get me subjected to scrutiny. So they really wanted me to talk so they could take my ideas and run off with it.
And go off, yeah.
And so I left that company. Yeah. Because of how insidious of an environment. Yep. It was. And it was over the top insidious. And so that's that's the worst word I can think of to describe what that environment was like. And so this is standard stuff. And And you can't stay in an environment like that when you are in a toxic environment. Anybody who's working in a toxic environment, once it reaches a point where it's beyond a place that is reasonably manageable, you have to get out.
Yeah.
Because if you do not, the detrimental impact that it has on you, your psyche, your mental health, your whole psychological well-being, that's not negotiable. And for some reason, a lot of people think it is. And they don't want to hear these stories. Matter of fact, I had an interview one place. You know what? I'm just going to tell you. I'm probably not going to get this job anyway. So I'm just going to tell you because I want to see how you're going to react to what I tell you. And I told them some of the things that happened to me.
Yeah.
And they thanked me. The two times I did that, they thanked me. In one case, I actually got that job, but in another case, I didn't. One of the other cases was the one where the person said I was overqualified and they hired the person with a tenth of literally hired a person with a tenth of my experience. So they did thank me for that. And I actually felt better after sharing that kind of stuff.
Like talking for real about it,
you
mean?
Let me be real. Yeah. I'm going to be transparent and see how you respect it. Now I'm gauging you.
Yeah. Well, it is. That's what it should be, right? I mean, what's weird is interviews are usually just the context of the interview is set up to be so much against you. You know, like you're in somebody else's environment, whether it's a physical or virtual environment.
Yeah.
You know, you've never been there. They're really comfortable there, right? You know, and you're being asked weird questions. Sometimes though, now I've interviewed at a couple places now where they send you all the questions ahead of time, where they send you really amazing, almost like coaching documentation. I was like, wow,
I've seen that. Yeah.
This is a new thing. I've never seen this before.
I've seen that. Yeah. In some cases where I've seen it, I recognize, I remember seeing something vaguely, seeing something on that line once where I'm like, okay, that's cool. Never looked at it again. I don't need that.
Yeah.
And in another case, I looked at it and I realized it was an ageist indicator because the nature of the questions were very ageist.
Okay.
I mean, like one of the questions that I think people should stop asking people, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah.
People should stop asking. That's a question that is reserved for folks that are on the younger part of the totem pole, the younger part of their journey. You don't ask a person who's been in working. I mean, we got more than 20 years of experience. Don't ask me where I see myself in 5 years.
Right.
That's just not a good question to ask. So there's certain questions that folks need to just lose completely. Tell me someone asked me once, they said, tell me a place where you failed and what you learned from that. And
that wasn't a great question for me recently, but yeah.
And I told the person, I said, well, I don't tolerate failure. So, I don't know why you're asking me this. I told him because I don't tolerate failure. So if I have done something and I fall short, I said, I've only worked on one failed UX project my entire career. One. And it didn't fail because I failed. It failed because, like you mentioned earlier, you mentioned a creative agency that was always trying to do all this stuff and they're trying to be on the cutting edge of everything from a design perspective. We were working with an agency just like that who took all of my wireframes, all my recommendations, and tweaked it and did what they pretty much ignored me and did what they wanted to do. And the whole thing failed because nobody could navigate it because you have these funny cursors that nobody knows where their cursor is because the cursor is spinning in circles instead of, it looked like a little fan that's spinning around. And so they can't find anything. They could, the interface was learnable, but I didn't recommend that you do that. I ended up signing off on it because I was forced to. Yeah. So, but you didn't follow what I did in the recommendations. This is not what we had. And then the product owner told them when we did the next version, please, this time, let's do what Darren recommends.
Right. Yeah.
And then the culmination of that was we ended up designing the best vehicle reveal site in the history of that automotive SEO. Or OEM. I'm sorry, not SEO, but OEM. It was the best site up to that point in the history of that company, is what I was told. But because we did what the UX person recommended, but I didn't fail. So I don't tolerate failure. We do research to make sure we don't fail. We design research to inform from a formative and a summative perspective. So there's no failing here. So why are you asking me that? The people who failed are people who are spitballing.
Yep.
The people who are faking it till they make it. The people who are pressured to do something, and then they do something because their manager is a multi or is a micromanager, and
Right.
so and that's where that stuff. So don't ask me something like that. So I think
Right.
there's a lot of people who don't understand interviewing.
Yep.
And they ask and they present things that they shouldn't. But that's the world we live in, and it's gonna happen. And I'm liable to have an interview next week where something like this even comes up.
Yep.
And so, what about passion? Don't you need passion? I say, yeah, but passion, once you're seasoned, passion is tempered.
Right.
You learn that it's not beneficial to be too excited. So you dial it back. And so the person who has nothing but passion with no filter,
right,
that's dangerous.
Very dangerous. Yeah.
So don't you know that? So now you're telling me something about you now. So.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of that. Yeah, you could interview by not saying a whole lot, actually, right?
Yeah.
By just listening to the questions.
So interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Last question. I know we had some other stuff that we were going to go over here, but last question, and we are definitely marathoning this, but that's fine. There's a lot of stuff people need to hear, and candid discussions. We need more of them.
Yes,
not coddling discussions, not Pollyanna-laced discussions where we're trying to find the best in everything. No rose-colored glasses on this show. We can't have that. You have an initiative. Because we've already done. We usually end up with free form and random stuff, but we've been free forming it throughout this whole thing. So we're just going to wrap up on this.
A little bit, yeah.
You have an initiative. I've seen a bunch of stuff that you've done in conjunction with this. I absolutely love everything about it. It's the kind of stuff people need to see. I wish you all the best with this initiative. But you have something called the Center of Excellence and Innovation. Forgot my sound effect. That means that we're going into this last topic officially. It's called the Center of Excellence and Innovation. So talk to the people about this, what your vision is for this, what you've done with it, what you see happening with it. I think more people need to know about this, and I'll do everything I can to support it as it goes forward. But talk to us, Lou, about the Center of Excellence and Innovation. And we're going to wrap this up as our last topic.
Sure. Okay. All right. Last topic. So here it is. So the Center of Excellence and Innovation right now is still kind of conceptual, but it's also moving in a direction where I'm researching how this is going to go. But at first, this is a phrase that a lot of companies use for their internal labs, let's say, their R&D labs. But the way I'm looking at it is this is an opportunity to take that phrase and turn it towards more of a growth and development kind of paradigm where I see everyone as having their own center of excellence and innovation inside of themselves, and what this potential, I don't know if it's training or whatever it turns into, will be a way to work with people in educational or training kind of way that looks at the whole person and actually helps them grow and mature in a leadership-like way as designers, as designers or whatever profession they might be in. I'm going to focus on design just because that's where I come from. That's where I've probably done the most work on myself. And, I do think that that's where it all starts, is that we should all be working on ourselves in some way. There's some inner technology that we can innovate and or learn how to use better. And that's what I see UX as a force within organizations, as sort of this kernel that can make an organization drive in the right direction or do the right ethical thing. So I don't know if that explains everything you're asking about it, Darren, but that's at least the kernel or the seed of what the idea is to, let's say this is outside of actual higher ed institutions that I've worked at, but it sort of takes like what I've learned as an educator, or I don't even think of myself as an educator, as someone who's very interested in learning and how individual people learn, but also how groups learn. And that I want to still be able to teach, but maybe outside of these institutions in a way that is whole person oriented, but also helps them use their own personal story as a way to uplift themselves and each other, that we all uplift each other in some way. So I'll stop there.
Okay, that sounds good. No, I love it. I love that. I'm in the same of the same mindset. I think doing things to help people grow, doing things to help people flourish, doing things to help people not only be empowered but have an awareness of the fact that they are that they are empowered. Because a lot of people are empowered and they don't realize it, and they have to come into a point where they recognize it and
Yep.
And recognize how that empowerment occurs so they can manage it. They have to be able to steer it. And you can't steer the boat until you find the steering wheel.
Right.
You simply can't.
And so you realize that you have a steering wheel and you
Yes.
have all of the tools right in front of you. I don't know how much at the beginning of my career I wasted thinking, if only I were empowered. Like I hate that
Yeah.
I wasted that time thinking that. And then when I got into a certain role, I messed something up, but like you said, I didn't mess it up. I look at it as my mistake, but it was a team-based thing where I was actually doing the right thing and trying to get a design decisions to go a certain way and didn't successfully do it. But what I realized is that I was fully empowered to be more successful in that spot in my career, but I just didn't necessarily have the right guidance at the moment. And I'm not pointing fingers at anyone, but now I know, and knowing that in the future, I know that I'm fully empowered, and or that if I feel like I'm struggling through something, all I have to do is reach out to pretty much anyone in my network, and they know who I am. They know that I can do pretty amazing things within the design industry and within innovation. And I think that we're all there for each other in some way, but I hope that the Center of Excellence and Innovation helps more people just realize how much they bring to the table and how it really is up to each one of us to make changes happen in the world,
Yes.
not only within design and innovation, but, out in the world with social innovation as well.
Awesome stuff. Okay, sir.
Okay.
We have completed our marathon.
Woo! All right.
I want to thank you again for taking the time to come on the show and sharing, Lou. I think we talked about a lot of stuff. Here that I'm gonna have a hard time writing the description for this one, but there's a lot of great points that I think people need to consider.
Yep.
And I will mention one thing that we mentioned one more time, folks. You come into UX, it's all about managing tornadoes. So no one understand that we are storm chasers extraordinaire. That's the best I can say. So get ready for the trip. Get ready for the journey. But thank you, Lou. I know people are going to love this. But folks, that is it. That's all the time we have for this episode, for this Talkin' Shop session with Lou Susi. And I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of your schedule to listen. Got us on in the background. You're sitting there chilling with your coffee and your tea and just listening, whatever it might be. Thank you for taking the time to listen. And as I have been doing lately, I am soliciting your take time to rate us on the places where you get your podcast from. Take time to share the podcast with other people in the UX community. Take time to help us go. I mean, truth rarely goes viral, and we are riding on the coattails of truth here. Truth never goes viral, but a lot of silly stuff does. If this show is benefiting you, please share it with other people in your UX communities. We greatly appreciate that. Help us to grow the audience, help us to get the word out with the types of things that we're sharing here so that we can help vault the discipline of UX forward. That's what this is all about. So until next time, it is time to sign off. So this is Darren Hood, the host of The World of UX, wishing everyone all the best. And until next time, happy UXing, everybody.